All right, we have we've been making our way through this book, and there's some brutal parts to it, but it's been so eye opening for me to take the time to study this. And again, we're going to read some. I'm going to read out of the New Living Translation a little bit today. I just like the way it takes 17 and 18, which are the chapters that we're in, and you'll be able to follow along with whatever version that you have. It reads a little more simple. And so I think it's going to be helpful for us to just see that. And so, just to kind of bring you up to speed without preaching through the whole book, we know that this is a book of it's an apocalypse. It's a book of end times. It's a book of prophecy. It's a letter. This is all given to John while he's on the Isle of Patmos as the last standing apostle of the risen Christ. And he was given this as a foreshadow of what was to come. And so what we've learned is it was written to them and through them to us. But we can't just bypass that and make it mean something to us that it didn't mean to them. And so it's important that we understand that as we become good students of the Word. And so what has happened down through time, probably around 1840, in the 40s, someone began to take this book and make it a little twisted, a little different, and brought into it what had not been taught. And we know that now is kind of the literal 7-year tribulation period and all that goes on with that. And I'm not saying there's anything I don't know enough to tell you in some of that. And so I'm careful, a student of the Word, and I'm not going to tell you what is or isn't. I will tell you what is, what we know. And so, but here's what I have discovered, that it's not right to take this book and make it a linear thing, because it's not. I don't believe it's like the trumpets or the scroll, and then out of the scroll is a trumpet. And it's a continuation, and out of the trumpets is a bowl. I think it's possible. When we looked at last week and we saw that the trumpets and the bowl judgments, the first 6 of them all carry the same thing. One's more severe. And so I'm not sure that we're looking at this as they unfold like that, but we are, what we say, getting little snapshots where John is seeing a vision, right? And he's explaining the vision to us, or really not even explaining, he's sharing, and then God is explaining some of those things to him. And so we see that unfold. So we are through all of the judgments, so to speak. The 7th judgment we're going to kind of look at today, and it's the final one. But we have seen that the trumpets took us to the final, that the scrolls took us to the final, right? We saw that. And so this is what I mean when I say we can't just take it linear. All of these were meant to explain, I think, from different vantage points. The scrolls from a believer's standpoint, those martyrs who were in heaven, the trumpets from those on the earth that are doing that. And then we saw real time the bigger picture in chapter 12, you remember? And we saw where there was always a war between Satan and God, and that there was a battle for Jesus, and there was a battle for really all of them. Moses, you can see it. It was like even Adam and Eve, he tried to corrupt their line. You can see where he did that. And there raged this battle, and we saw the dragon that was at the birth of Christ, right? So we saw all those things. Then last week we looked at chapter 15 and 16, and we saw in that where there is the temple is open, and it says that the tabernacle of testimony, that section of it is open, and that's where the moral law, the commandments, that was where the ark was, and the commandments were in that, and it was the seat of authority and power. And so what we found there was that 15 to 16 is kind of a contrast. In this is the moral word of God, and this is the degradation that man had done to that, and the violation of that. And so we saw the bowl judgment unfold, and that God literally is going to drag the nations to Jerusalem to bring about his wrath and his judgment. That's what was going on. And so we saw that. We saw where they were all gathering at the Valley of Megiddo, right? Armageddon, right? And that was what was going on. And so we saw 2 things there that we just wanted to make note of. Because in one of the scenes we saw where Jesus had planted his feet on the mountain, and we know that it's going to split in two. But there are two hills where God poured out his wrath. There's the hill of Calvary, right? And he poured out his wrath on his son. And then there's the plain of Armageddon, and he will pour his wrath on the people who didn't follow the son. This is what wrath is going to be paid. Either he will or you will. And so this is what's going on. And so Christ has offered us to take our wrath on himself. And so that's what's going on there. And so that kind of brings us up to speed. And again, I realize it's a little choppy in that. So today we get to chapter 17. And here's where we're going to begin. And so it said, let me get to it. One of the seven angels who had poured out the seven bowls came over and spoke to me. So remember, the seven bowl judgments were poured out, and we saw that they mirrored the trumpets, and they looked a lot like the plagues of Egypt, right? They were very similar in what they did. There was a different degree. To one of them, only a third of the seas, and the other was like the whole sea, right? And so we could see the contrast. This is a lot more powerful move of wrath, where the other was somewhat tempered, right? It would be the best way to say it. And isn't that a lot how kind of God deals with us, right? I mean, it's kind of like as parents, we do the same thing. Hey, you probably don't want to do that, and your kid does it. I'm telling you, I don't think that's good for you. And you kind of give them a little pop on the wrist. But there's a severity because you want them to understand that you mean what you said. You're trying to be gracious here, but if you won't accept the grace, then there's gonna be a right, because he has a standard. And so you can see this is what God's doing here. He did the same thing in the days of Noah when he was sick of everything he had made. So I'm going to destroy. I'm going to give him 120 days. I'm going to send Noah, a man who's righteous, to preach to them for 120 years, right? You see in the midst of all of this, God's wrath. So, God's mercy in the midst of all of that, right? Even in the midst of his allowing, and listen, it's not like he pours stuff out. He just leaves us to ourselves, and we destroy ourselves. And that was what happened to the nation of Israel. And so we see there, we say, man, how often I really wanted to bring you in, right? I think it's important when we look at so much wrath that we've been looking at, it's important to remind ourselves that in the middle of all of this wrath, there is still the gracious, loving, merciful God who's trying to get people to turn, right? We should see that. And so now we come to this, and so I've titled this "The Rise and Fall of False Religion" because this is what's going on. So you remember there were two beasts. There was the dragon who was standing on the sand of the shore, right? And so there's the dragon. That's Satan himself, and he calls up out of the water the beast, right? That is the Antichrist. That is, and we know it's not just a person. Everybody tends to want to put their mindset on the person. Who is the person? It's really the person is only the point, man. It's Satan ultimately. Whoever the Antichrist literally is, it is the empire that he is building that is the thing. It is what Satan is after, to build an empire. Satan is still doing what he's always been trying to do, excel over God, to what the book of Isaiah says, that I will be like God, right? I will set my throne above him. And so Satan has been trying to do that. And so he brings this beast up out of the sea. And so you have that. And we know from that section where we looked at that it is empires, it is nations. And so this is the epitome of it. And then we also saw that there was another beast that would rise up, and it was the false prophet. And he would point people to worship the beast, right? And so this was what was going on. And so it is, in some sense, an unholy trinity. It is Satan who is pretending to be God. It is the Antichrist who is pretending to be Christ, and it is a false prophet who is pretending to be the Spirit. All right, makes sense to you? This is kind of what's going on. And so what we're looking at today is this, what's behind it all. And so if you're ready, let's just kind of look at it and we'll see it unfold. He says, one of the seven angels who had poured out the seven bowls came over and spoke to me. Come with me, he said, and I will show you the judgment that is going to come on the great prostitute. Your Bible may say the harlot, who rules over many waters. The kings of the world have committed adultery with her, and the people who belong to this world have been made drunk by the wine of her immorality. So the angel took me in the spirit into the wilderness, and there I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that had 7 heads and 10 horns, and blasphemies against God were written all over it. The woman wore purple and scarlet clothing and beautiful jewelry made of gold and precious gems and pearls. In her hand she held a gold goblet full of obscenities and the impurities of her immorality. A mysterious name was written on her forehead, Babylon the Great, mother of all prostitutes and obscenities in the world. I could see that she was drunk with the blood of God's holy people who were witnesses for Jesus. I stared at her in complete amazement. Now, that's the picture that he gives to us. So let's just kind of see this unfold. I'm going to kind of walk us through some of this so that we see what's going on. This is what is considered the mystery religion, right? This is Babylon. It's a false religion. It began in Babel, right? That's where the word Babylon comes from, right? So Nimrod built this city, who was somewhat of an evil man, history tells us, and so what happened there was men began to think that they were great, right? So they're building their own ziggurat. They're building their own tower to prove that, hey, we're equal to God. So much so that God looked at them and said, man, if we leave them alone, there's no limit to what they can do. That's when he confounded them and gave them different languages so they couldn't communicate, so that they couldn't all come together and unite and do this thing. And so we saw that. And so then Babylon has always been known as the city of immorality and the city of great false religion, right? Now, if you, it's funny, you go back and you read commentaries who were written in the 80s, and when Saddam Hussein was rebuilding Babylon, everybody was sure that was what was going on, and that Babylon is going to be this huge empire. We're going to see this in a minute as it unfolds. But so Babylon was the first of the great cities that really brought in this tremendous false worship. And we know that from the days of Nebuchadnezzar and him wanting everybody to bow down to him and all of the gods and the Baal worship. We see all of that, right? Now, it's not limited to just Babylon. Every nation every great empire has always had a false religion. Every one of them. Just go all the way back to as far back as you want to go, and they had that. If you want to go to the Kublai Khans and all of China, you'll see that. You pick an empire. Greece, they had all their Roman gods. Assyria had their gods. You go to Rome. Rome had their gods. In fact, it was Caesar that at some point decided he was going to be their god. And so we see that that's what's going on. And so here he is describing false religion as it is gotten fat and grotesque on the back of the whole world. So what we're learning from this is that, and we can see it, right? Now, we always thought atheism was kind of the thing, but if you're paying close attention to what's going on in the world today, atheism isn't the big thing. It's satanic ritualism that is the big thing. You can see it. Hollywood's not hiding that stuff anymore, and you can see it everywhere. It's just in our face, right? And so this is the thing. This harlot, this prostitute, is causing the world to worship Satan, to have turned their back on the God of all creation, and chose to worship the creature. And so let's just kind of see this unfold. He says in verse 1 of this, we'll go back and look at this again. Get to it. One of the 7 angels who poured out 7 bowls came and said to me, "Come and see," he said, "and I will show you the judgment that is going to come on this great prostitute who rules over many waters." Now, that many waters is used of several things. One, that was what Babylon was called, because when Babylon's empire, it was surrounded by like the majority of the seas. But it's also been come to waters means many nations. And so here what he's saying is, here is a false prophet. Here is a false religion that is got a stronghold in a multitude of nations going on. And so you see it kind of creeping in there. And like I said, every great nation has had that. Listen to what it says in verse 2. The kings of the world have committed adultery with her, and the people who belong to this world have been made drunk by the wine of her immorality. One of the things false religion always has associated with is some sort of a sexual immorality, some sort of a deal like that. You can't miss it. You go anywhere and you see that is what was going on. And we see that even today in this the immorality, the sexual perversion that is really entrenching itself in our culture. And so then this isn't a political issue. This is just what's going on. Our world is sick. You look at how sex trafficking is becoming a dominant force, and you understand that this world is craving sick substitutes for what God meant to be holy. And so there's a demand for it. And so that's what's going on. Now, the beast, in verse 3, it says, so the angel took me to the spirit in the wilderness, and there I saw the woman sitting on a scarlet beast that had 7 heads and 10 horns. So this is that beast that we saw coming up. This is the world system. So what we see is now the world system is doing its thing, and riding on it, almost controlling it, is this false religion. Because you have to pair them together, because if you let God be God, well, then everything falls. And so you're going to see our nation, you're going to see other nations just begin to do away with God altogether. Now we're seeing that, right? I mean, I don't want to sound like that old rambling man, but we see that happening. We saw it happen in Europe, right? And we heard where Nietzsche wanted to say, hey, God is dead, right? These truths have been there. That's what's going on over there. It's come to America, and we see it. We see it here now too. We see ourselves turning into a secular nation. So I'm not saying that we are seeing this unfold, other than just you can see that there is some things going on. And here's what it says. The woman wore purple and scarlet clothing and beautiful jewelry, and made of gold, precious gems, and pearls. In her hand she held a goblet full of obscenities and impurities of immorality. There is this, it's just picture whatever you would think is the most alluring woman that you can find, and this is what this is. He's seeing this vision as false religion is a prostitute, it's a harlot. That's exactly how God described it, right? That you have whored yourself. That's basically how he told Israel they did. Why are you doing that? And he said, I told you to come out from among them and be ye separate. I told you when you went in to take over the promised land to root them out, or that you would marry them and you would chase after their gods. We see that even King Solomon fell to that, right? This is what's going on. And so this is an alluring issue that's taking place. And so he paints it in this seductive mindset. And so here she is all garbed out and all her stuff. But he said, but on the inside, what's she doing? Man, she's full of obscenities and impurity in her immorality. A mysterious name was written on her forehead. Babylon the Great, mother of all prostitutes and obscenities in the world. I could see that she was drunk with the blood of God's holy people who were witnesses for Jesus. And so what we see here is this woman is the false religion is out just to destroy the church. And it's happened. You look at every false religion. Who are they going after? Why is it that they just now you see pockets where the Hindus and the Buddhists kind of fight with each other in India, but for the most part, they hate the Christians. What's going on in China where they have this kind of an atheistic style of things? Who are they going after? The Christians. Who are they going after during communism? It was the Christians. Who are they going after down in Africa with all of that? It's the Christians, right? It is because why is no one trying to destroy the Book of Mormon? Why is no one trying to destroy the Quran? Why is it the Bible that they want to destroy? Because there's power there. Can we just reason together and realize that this is what this means? That Christians have always been the ones who has been the whipping post of every false religion that's come along? Why? Because it's the true religion. That's the only reason. It's the true religion. And so we see this going on here. And so John is just amazed at this vision. And the angel said, why are you so amazed? I will tell you the mystery of this woman and the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns on which she sits. The beast you saw was once alive, but isn't now. And yet he will soon come up out of the bottomless pit. So all of a sudden, we're not real time, we're going back in time, right? When we're listening to John, he's saying, hey, the beast that you're looking at, it's not really here right now, it was. All right, so I just want this to be clear, because this is where people get tripped up trying to make this book make sense to people. It's a vision. So you caught that though, right? The beast you saw was once alive, but now isn't, and yet will soon come up out of the bottomless pit and go to the eternal destruction. And the people who belong to this world, whose names were not written in the book of life before the world was made, will be amazed at the reappearance of the beast who had died. He said, listen, so what you just saw, it's already gone, but he's coming back. And the people, when they see that, will be amazed. All right, is it making sense? I just want to make sure we're clear as we go through, because he's explaining things to us. Then he says, the scarlet beast that was, but is no longer, is the 8th king. He's like the other 7, and he too is headed for destruction. So he's telling us now that there are 8 kings, if you will. The 10 horns of the beast are the 10 kings who have not yet risen to power. They will be appointed to their kingdoms for one brief moment to reign with the beast. They will all agree to give him power and authority, and together they will go out and wage war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will defeat them because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and his called and chosen faithful ones will be with him. So he's giving us this picture. Hey, that beast that was isn't, but it's coming back. There's an empire going to rise. A one world government is coming, right? But he's going to go the way of them, and they're going to all meet to kind of finally think maybe they're strong enough this go round to actually kill the Lamb. And so they've all gathered to do so. But then the Lord of lords and the King of kings will come and you near with him. And his called and chosen faithful ones will be with him. Then the angel said to me, the water where the prostitute is ruling represents masses of people of every nation and language, right? So the prostitute's ruling over many waters, right? What's going to happen is there's going to be a one world religion that's coming too. I'm just saying, you're going to see that. Now that doesn't mean that we Christians are gone. It just means that there is going to be the whole world will unite in worshiping Satan himself. Now, whether it's Satan full on or like he's done always through these every Buddha, any religious leader has always been a tool of Satan, right? So this is what's going on here. He says the scarlet beast and his 10 horns all hate the prostitute. Now we're seeing something. The beast is tired of this prostitute. All of a sudden she's like, I think she's maybe taking his thunder a little bit or whatever. And so there's this jealousy that's going on. And it says they will strip her naked, eat her flesh, and burn her remains with fire. For God has put a plan into their minds, a plan that will carry out his purposes. Can we just stop for a minute and see that? Kings think that they got it all together and they're outsmarting God. They don't even know, right? I mean, it was God who brought Jesus to Herod. It was God who brought him to that place. Everything that he did. Jesus, no, his life wasn't taken. He laid it down for us. He only put it in the minds of those men to do those things so that he would accomplish his purpose. So these kings are all, what they're thinking and what they're doing is something that God put it in their mind. And it says they will strip her naked, eat her flesh, and for God has put a plan into their mind, a plan that will carry out his purposes. They will agree to give their authority to the scarlet beast, and so the words of God will be fulfilled. And this woman you saw in your vision represents the great city that rules over the kings of the world. Now, we could mean a city, or it could mean it's difficult to maneuver through, but but that phrase could mean an empire, not a city, and so it would be a religious empire, not necessarily a kingdom empire. But I'm going to leave that for better men to me than to figure this out. He's just saying here that this woman you saw in your vision represents that great entity that rules the kings of the world, which is a false system of religion. They're all driven by that. They all believe that they're God's anointed. Hitler believed he was God's anointed, right? You just see it. You see it everywhere. I was studying Kubla Khan the other day, and he thought he was the representative of God, which wasn't our God, but he thought that he was actually ruling in God's stead when he decided to take over Mongolia and try to bring in the Chinese empire. All of them, all the Caesars thought that. The reason why the pyramids are there, because all the Egyptian pharaohs thought they were God, right? And so this is what's going on, and so you see it played out here. And so let's go back and talk about these 7 heads and all of that. I think we're going to come back to it again later, but there's 7 hills. Did we read that already? So Rome was a city of 7 hills, and that's why some people say, well, it's going to be Rome. So in the old days, people would say that that Babylon and all of this false religion was going to be the Catholic religion. It was coming from Rome, and because of the city of 7 hills, and so. But Rome is one of those kingdoms. I'm not saying that it is that. I'm just telling you what people's thoughts were. But is it here? I'm sorry, I'm lost now. I think it's later where he says there 5 are, one's fallen, one will come again. I should be reading out of my other one, and then I would know where it is. Let me go back to it real quick. Yeah. Verse 9. This calls for a mind with understanding. The 7 heads of the beast represent the 7 hills where the woman rules. And so they're going, oh, well, that must be Rome. Well, in his day, that was the kingdom, right? That was the one that was ruling in his day. They also represent 7 kings. 5 kings have already fallen. The 6th now reigns. The 7 is yet to come, but his reign will be brief. Let me break that down for us because we can see it all the way through the scriptures. 5 have fallen. Now, Daniel spoke of some of those kingdoms. But let me just kind of explain to you who these kingdoms were that this false religion was a part of. One, it was Egypt and Assyria. Then it was Babylon. Then it was Medo-Persia. Then it was Greece. That's 5. Then Rome is. That's where he says one is. And then one's to come. That's going to be the Antichrist. But he will have a mortal wound. You remember? It'll be a little brief season, and then he'll come back in fury. So this is when all that little rhyme and rhythm. I'm trying to make it make sense to us. So 5 kingdoms have come. That's what he says. They've already fallen. The 6th one reigns now, and then when this was written, that's why I say it can't be written about us. It's got to be written about them. The one that was ruling then is Rome. And the 7th is yet to come. Well, that's the Antichrist. There's going to be another. Rome, we know, has already fallen, right? Now, some would say Rome will be resurrected. There's a lot of that goes on. And so they're going to say, or some will say the 10 kings represent the European Federation. Listen, everybody's just blowing smoke when they say those things. We don't know. We do know what this says. We do know that it says the 6th now reigns, and the 7th is to come, but his reign will be brief. The scarlet beast that was, but is no longer, is the 8th king. You hear what's going on? So the beast it's gonna look like it fails, and then it's gonna come back, and it's gonna be bigger than ever, and that's the 8th one. So I hope I'm not confusing you. I feel like sometimes I'm going through this and it's not making sense. So that's what's taking place. Now, the 10 kings are federations. So here's what's going to happen. When the Antichrist finally gets to where he is, the eighth kingdom, 10 kings who haven't come to power yet, he's going to pull in to them and create some sort of federation. Now, we could guess what those kingdoms are. We could say, well, it must be, let's call it, let's say it's Russia, because everybody's hating on Russia right now, and then he's going to bring in China, he's going to bring in Ethiopia, he's going to bring in Europe, right? He's going to bring in America, he's going to bring, right? And those are all the 10 kings that are not all in power yet, but they're going to, and they're going to give all their authority to the beast. That's what it says, right? So, yeah, and you can see a lot of that right now. You just see winds of that, right? There's a lot of countries are beginning to put a lot of stock in different organizations now besides their own government, and nations aren't as sovereign as they used to be, but there's kind of been muddy. World Federation and Economic Forum and all those things, if you keep up with the news, you see that there's kind of this loose thing going on, and people are beginning to go, okay, well, I'll agree with that. I'm not saying that is this, I'm just saying you can see the road is being paved for something like that. Now, so they all agree to give him power. That's what it said in verse 12. But then it says in verse 14, together they will go to war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will defeat them, and because he is Lord of all lords and King of all kings, and has called and chosen, and faithful ones will be with him. Then the angel said, the waters where the prostitute is ruling represents masses of people over every nation and language. The scarlet beast and his 10 horns all hate the prostitute. They're going to strip her naked, eat her flesh, they're going to destroy her. Now we come to chapter 18. This kind of goes quickly because it's more poetic than anything else. And so it just says this. After this, I saw another angel come down from heaven with great authority, and the earth grew bright with splendor. He gave a mighty shout. Babylon is fallen. The great here we are at the climax again. Just like all of these trumpets have ended in that place. Babylon is fallen. That great city is fallen. She's become a home for demons. She is a hideout for every foul spirit, a hideout for every foul vulture and every foul and dreadful animal. For all the nations have fallen because of the wine of her passion and immorality. The kings of the world. Now he's going back to talk about this great false religion and what it's done to everybody, right? It's a home for demons. Every false religion, it's just a demonic thing. It's a hideout for every foul spirit. It's a hideout for every foul vulture and every foul and dreadful animal. For all the nations have fallen because of the wine of her passion and immorality, of what it promised. It was seductive. Every false religion is seductive and usually promises power or money or sexual pleasures. It's all. Just go back and look. It's all of those things. What is it that drives men into power and hunger? And what happens to men who get there? They get power hungry, right? Usually that's what goes on. They want wealth and they want sex unlimited. That's what happens. And so you see it going on there. And he says, for all the nations have fallen because of the wine of her passion and morality. The kings of the world have committed adultery with her. Because of her desires for extravagant luxury, the merchants of the world have grown rich. Listen, they're profiting off of this false religion, of this stuff that's going on. And this is what we're hearing here. Then I heard a voice calling from heaven, come away from her, my people. Do not take part in her sins, or you will be punished with her. God is always mercifully calling out to his people. Don't get, just like he did to the nation of Israel. Hey, don't go chase after them. Don't intermarry with them. I'm telling you, it's going to drag you where you shouldn't go. That's why in the New Testament it says, come out from among them, be ye separate. Bad company corrupts good morals, right? That we end up being led astray. This is what all of this is about. Then I heard another voice calling from heaven, come away from her, my people. Do not take part in her sins, or you'll be punished with her. For her sins are piled as high as heaven, and God remembers her evil deeds. Do to her as she has done to others. Double the penalty for all her evil deeds. She brewed a cup of terror for others, so brew twice as much for her. She glorified it. He's like, hey, don't you give in. Don't you play nice with this. This is a time. This is not the time for us to play nice. He's saying, this is not what's going on. She glorified herself and lived in luxury, so match it now with torment and sorrow. She boasted in her heart, I am queen on my throne. I am no helpless widow, and I have no reason to mourn. Therefore these plagues will overtake her in a single day. Death and mourning and famine. What's going to happen? All the nations are going to gather there in the valley of Megiddo. And in one fell swoop, she's going to see all of this. Death, mourning, and famine. She'll be completely consumed by fire, for the Lord God who judges her is mighty. I love that, because there's a time right now, listen, there are people who they don't even believe in God, right? It's gotten to that place. There's not our God. It's funny to me how you can believe in the demons, but you can't believe in the God who created the demons. But that's what's going on. Hey, they have no doubt listen to their thirst for power. Satan, Hitler was a satanic worshiping freak. That's what's going on. And so that's what's happening here. And it says, and all the kings of the world who committed adultery with her and enjoyed her great luxury will mourn for her as they see the smoke rising from her charred remains. They will stand at a distance, terrified by her great torment. And they will cry out, how terrible for you, O Babylon, and great city. It's a single moment. God's judgment came on you. The merchants of the world are going to reap and mourn, for there's no one left to buy their goods. She bought great quantities of gold and silver. She was like a money train for them. She also bought cinnamon, spice, incense, myrrh, right? The fancy things you love so much are gone, they cry. All the luxuries and splendors are gone forever. The merchants who became wealthy by selling her. Listen, everybody's profiting off of her. This is what we're reading there. And all the captains of the merchant ships and their passengers and sailors and crews will stand at a distance. They will cry out as they watch the smoke ascend, and they will say, where is there another city as great as this? And they will weep and throw dust on their heads and show their grief, and they will cry out, how terrible for that great city. The ship owners became wealthy by transporting her great wealth on the seas. In a single moment, it's all gone. Rejoice over her fate, O heaven, and people of God, apostles and prophets, for at last God has judged her for your sake. So the whole world is mourning. And he said, don't you do that. I finally have brought justice. I have killed the beast, right? That's what he's saying. Then a mighty angel picked up a boulder the size of a huge millstone. He threw it into the ocean and shouted, just like this, the great city Babylon will be thrown down with violence. It will never be found again. The sounds of harps, singers, flutes, and trumpets will never be heard again. No craftsmen, no trades will ever be found in you again. The sound of the mill will never be heard in you again. The light of a lamp will never shine in you again. The happy voices of brides and grooms will never be heard in you again. For your merchants were the greatest in the world, and you deceived the nations with your sorcery. In your streets flow the blood of the prophets and God's holy people, and the blood of people slaughtered all over the world. There is judgment that's coming. And that's what we're reading there. I know this sounds terribly like, a downer, because all we're seeing it every Sunday is like this judgment's coming. But we see God's mercy in all of that. But I'm grateful that vindication's coming. I'm tired of seeing what's going on in this world. You know what I mean? I'm not the holiest of man. I am in His eyes. I've been declared holy. I'm still in the process of getting there, and so are you. But He's not going to. He already judged us. He judged us at the cross, and we hide underneath that. That's what that means, right? And so He is at peace with me, and He will never not be at peace with me. And He has totally forgiven me, and I will never have a sin that's not forgiven by Him. In this true of you too. And so we stand with Him, saying, yes, that's been our trouble. And we will rejoice when God destroys that on that day. That's the message for today. Come back next week and we'll be more the same. No, it's getting better. We're getting ready to get to heaven. And so hang in here. We got a lot of good stuff to talk about. So, let's pray together, and we're going to sing our way out of here. Thank you, Father, for your truth, for the power of it, for the wow, Father. It's hard sometimes just to read and to digest, but to see it in imagery like this helps us make it make sense. And so, Father, may you come quickly. May you restore those things that ought to be. And thank you for your grace in our own lives. And we ask it in Christ's name.